Hey there, folks. Welcome to this week's astrological report for December 9 through December 15 of 2025. Hope you're doing well. It looks like this week we have some significant Mercury aspects once again, as Mercury is direct, coming back through a lot of the alignments that it's already been making with other planets, including Mercury opposite Uranus for the third and final time. That's going to be exact on Wednesday, December 10. On Wednesday, December 10, tomorrow, we also have Neptune stationing direct. That's a major influence for the week ahead. Everything about Neptune is super amplified, and Neptune's at this last critical degree of Pisces from now until late January, when it will ingress back into Aries for this new transit that's coming up. But now through January, everything about Neptune is super critical, and definitely this week, and I'll explain more about that. And also on Wednesday, we have Venus in Sagittarius reaching a T-square with the nodes of fate. So very fateful for money and relationships this week. Mercury will continue on to the end of Scorpio and make a trine aspect to that Neptune as Mercury reaches the last critical degree of Scorpio. That's going to be on Thursday, December 11. We also have more nodes of fate being activated. Thursday is also the last quarter moon. The moon will be ingressing into Virgo and making a square to the sun in Sagittarius. So that's a little bit of a challenge midweek into the end of the week, it looks like. Mercury will then change signs back into Sagittarius, and then we'll have 4 planets in Sagittarius for the rest of the week. Mercury will then be moving by next week past its retrograde shadow and into new territory. Finally. Then also we're going to have Mars making an inconjunction to Uranus. That's going to be by December 13. That same day, Mercury will start making a sextile to Pluto. From Sagittarius back to Pluto in Aquarius. We've been going through that back and forth already. This is the final sextile for that. And then on December 14, Sunday, Mars is square Neptune. Also at this last critical degree of Sagittarius right before Mars changes signs. So that's something we should definitely be aware of and be mindful of. I'll talk more about that, what it might mean. And we also will have the sun making a trine to Chiron on Sunday. The sun will be in conjunct to Jupiter as well. And then by next Monday, on December 15, Mars does ingress Capricorn where it's exalted. It's a really change of gears from that point forward. Mars is still coming off this square with Saturn. That was exact yesterday, but it's still relevant even today and for the next couple days. Still a lot of friction between these 2 points here. So those are all the major aspects. The moon is currently in Leo, at the end of Leo. It's going to be waning all through the sign of Virgo, reaching that south node, karmic point for the week. Moon will then be waning all through Libra, and it'll ingress Scorpio by next Sunday night. All right, and as always, you can find these aspects written out below for you with the timestamps for the week ahead. Let's get started and go through all these aspects day by day. I want to start here on Tuesday, December 9, and we have 3 planets in Sagittarius. That's where the main focus is. So we're in the season of going big, and with Sagittarius being ruled by Jupiter in Cancer, the home and the family, it's like go big or go home during this dynamic. And currently with the moon in Leo, that supports Sagittarius, so we have a lot of fire, which is a lot more instinctive, passionate, active, creative for the rest of Tuesday as the moon is at the last degrees of Leo. Let me back up this chart to today here. I'm running behind, as you probably can tell, but I'm still here getting this out for you. All right, so as the moon for, let's see, we're on Tuesday. Yeah, so for Tuesday, as the moon is in Leo, it's being ruled by the sun in Sagittarius. The moon is coming off of a trine to the sun. So this is part of the lunar cycle where the inner and the outer focus are in alignment with each other. Again, it's more fiery and passionate and active and creative. And the moon here shows people are still a little more dramatic, still a lot more creative. They want to have fun and self-express themselves here. Again, it comes back to Sagittarius, which wants to go big. This focus on Sagittarius tends to show a lot more opinions and beliefs are in focus as well. Looking at the bigger picture, what's above and beyond, it's a lot more adventurous. Some people could be seeking truth and answers and understanding or seeking adventure. Also, the season of sports really being highlighted. But again, we have that Mars still in a square with Saturn. So there has been a few roadblocks or some friction here that we've been dealing with in the background for the last couple days, which can kind of show maybe even some of the slowdowns or delays or blocks or obstacles that some people have had to get through. I think especially for people that have these mutable degrees, the last 5 degrees of the zodiac here. All right, so for Tuesday, moon trine sun early in the morning. The moon has also been in a trine aspect with Chiron. In fact, there's a grand trine to Chiron from the Sagittarius, from the Leo here. So Chiron is being aspected in an easier way that can help with confidence and how people feel about themselves, people's freedom and independence, and any kind of wounds or insecurities. By taking action and just how things are playing out could just help people feel better about themselves, generally speaking. Moon is also in conjunct to Saturn today. That's going to be the next aspect building up this afternoon. And that's where this moon in Leo, again, moon in Leo shows people want to be more self-expressive and creative and joyful and happy, big-hearted, and really put themselves out there in this more sunny, bright kind of vibe. But it's clashing. We have to make adjustments to that general mood to these serious things that are behind the scenes that Saturn represents that have been activated by the square from Mars this last couple days. So there's pressures, stresses, worry, heaviness, fears that are still tripping people up from behind the scenes. A lot of different people. And this moon, the circumstances are adjusting to that as the day goes on this afternoon. And then the moon is also trine Mars as the day goes on. And that shows that we'll make some sort of an adjustment to the seriousness of what's behind the scenes. And then things will open up into a more flowing dynamic for the rest of the evening. Generally here, because we also will have the moon squaring Mercury and Uranus. So the moon is actually entering a T-square later on this evening and tonight. Let me move this forward here. We also have, it's not exact yet, but now that Jupiter's retrograde, it's backing up into another square with Chiron. Chiron's backed up to its retrograde degree. It's going to be just hanging out here for a while. And again, this has been an ongoing square that we've been dealing with about Chiron and Jupiter. You know, there could be too much going on about Chiron, too much about wounds or healing that's been activated back and forth for months. And kind of over-amplifying people's wounds here, especially if they have these 22 to 26 degrees roughly there of Aries. But the moon, like I said, aligns with Mars later on this evening, shows great alignment for activity. But then with this moon T-square Mercury and Uranus, it kind of activates the Mercury opposing Uranus for the third and final time, which will be exact the following day. But the moon is getting in on this right here on Tuesday night. So with moon square Mercury, these two are clashing with each other. Again, Leo versus Scorpio. Mercury is still in Scorpio, the deep end of life. The sign that's more about reading between the lines and picking up on things and knowing things on a deeper level, but not always having to say everything. And the moon in Leo is much more expressive and outward. So again, these deeper, inner, more private energies are clashing with the more outward, dramatic mood that's coming in for Tuesday night. But at the same time, with the moon squaring Uranus, there could be some disruptions here. There's a big T-square going on. And also, it could, from this point forward and then all day on Wednesday, show that there could be more unexpected news, unexpected information, changes of plans, looking at things differently, a perception change that's going to be happening again. So things, the mind, communications, technology, travel, transportation could get a little squirrely here for the next couple days with unpredictability and volatility in the air. And I think this strong sense of volatility comes in again tonight on Tuesday. So that could show there's maybe going to be some disruptions, change of plans. The night might just not be your normal Tuesday night, with something coming out here. Or it could be on the global level with news and information that's shocking or surprising that's starting to come out. Again, kind of dramatic, possibly on Tuesday into Wednesday. And whatever this is that kind of gets initiated by tonight, it leads to a lot of this fateful kind of crossroads that the world is at for the rest of the week, with the nodes of fate being activated. So it's not the greatest night to try to express yourself to other people, engage in deep, meaningful conversation, because there's too much friction involved. I would wait this one out, but because there's so much friction involved, it could still show that people are impulsively reacting or communicating or speaking, whether it was planned or not. So there's a sense of, again, some unpredictability and surprises and drama, excitement in the air on Tuesday night. So that's a big T-square that we normally don't deal with. And then the last aspect for Tuesday night will be the moon in conjunct to Neptune, which again is stationing, so is extra powerful and amplified and critical in these behind the scenes ways, energetically influencing the world, the collective unconscious, and how what people are picking up on and projecting out into the world. You have to be aware of projections that could be very powerful with Neptune stationing here. People tend to project outward, and the world too. The world stage could be putting on a show and projecting something out. Now, how real or honest it all is, that's a whole different story. But Neptune is also imagination and creativity, and everything about that is going to be building up and super amplified. So I'll talk more about that as I move forward into Wednesday. But as the moon is making that in conjunction on Tuesday night, it's like the last critical degree, at 29. So it's like adjusting to energetic sensitivity or feelings, or, being pulled into the background, your own world. Now this is super late. It's like the last aspect of the day. So right before midnight. And it'll be early for other people on the East Coast, early morning hours. Kind of more of a sensitive mood. And then that really does change the overall mood as we get to Wednesday on December 10, as the moon will ingress Virgo for the next 2.5 days. So now the moon is coming in to this more practical phase of the cycle. Now that the moon is in Virgo, the circumstances are being ruled by Mercury, which is again reaching this opposition with Uranus. So this isn't the most grounded, practical, stable phase that we're entering into by midweek, because again, it's ruled by Mercury opposing a radical planet of Uranus with unpredictability and surprises. The mind is still being stirred up. Now, we've gone through this opposition multiple times. We've been looking at things differently, processing things differently. And this is trying to show us that this is the ultimate culmination between Mercury and Uranus that's been building up for months now. And that's where, now we're seeing different potentials. We're seeing things in a different perspective that are outside the box with possibilities even. How are you looking at your reality, your future, your plans? There's kind of this need to think differently, maybe even try different things. But again, it's kind of a little bit of a wild vibe. There can be a revolutionary vibe in the air too, with people's thoughts and feelings. And then that's going to end up changing the mood around thoughts and feelings too, with everything happening, since the moon is in a Mercury sign. So there's still a strong potential by Wednesday that there's still ongoing communications and information, news and media that's really excitable, and things that are coming out still that are critical, as Mercury will start to reach the last degree too. But now that the moon is in Virgo, it starts to add more tension for the rest of the week, because the moon in Virgo is at odds with the main focus, which is Sagittarius, the bigger picture, and going big with things and looking above and beyond and understanding things from this bigger perspective, whereas the moon in Virgo shows that the mood and circumstances want to get down to the details and narrow the focus and work with practical things, work and service. And again, it's a very fateful place of the zodiac as the moon is approaching the south node, continuing to show, okay, this is the eclipse territory, and what needs to continue to be purged or purified or restructured or reorganized. What issues about health have to be dealt with for the next few days, or cleaning things up and organizing things in a better way, and working and just getting down to business here and taking care of important practical matters. But we will run into a few obstacles as we try to get more detailed and practical. So that's going to be a big mood change for the next 2.5 days. The moon in Virgo. We also have the moon making an in conjunction to Pluto in the group in the community for Wednesday morning. Won't last very long, but we have to make this adjustment to the friends, the group, the community as well, that could affect our practical everyday routine or what we're trying to work on. There's other influences that we're adjusting to, including the community, the power dynamics, the world. Adds a little bit of an edginess to the mood, perhaps. And then this is where Neptune is stationing direct at this last critical degree. So again, everything about Neptune, which has a lot of different meanings, it's going to show that for some people, it's like an escapism, a tapping out, a retreat kind of vibe that's going to be really powerful. Things could feel a little more fuzzy, foggy, a little more dreamy, in the background. It could show that there could be more of a pull or an emphasis for a lot of people to be pulled into their own world, to be pulled into their own issues with Saturn too. That Saturn is in the background influencing people's stress and fears and worries, so all those things about Saturn could also be over amplified, since Neptune is right next to Saturn, very powerful. So it could be positive or negative depending on the person. But as far as the positive goes, it can be more of a spiritual vibe for people, getting super amplified, more psychic, more intuitive, kind of wanting to tap into, again, the bigger picture of life. We have all this Pisces and Sagittarius, which are these signs that deal with faith and belief and truth and trying to understand things. And Pisces is more about other dimensional things and hidden things. But on the more practical side of it, it could also show there is scandalous matters that are happening in the world. Scandals and conspiracies could be really amplified this week. People talking about it, or even things coming out as Mercury is in this last bit of Scorpio that was digging deep for truth and answers. For other people, again, it can be like a strong pull to music or film, photography, a dream world. Producing things, just trying to be more creative and build and structure things from behind the scenes, working on creative projects could be super amplified. And then for other people, it can add a sense of uncertainty in the air, confusions, doubts, questions about things, that are kind of fuzzy and foggy here. And then on the practical, mundane level, it could very well show from now through, all through the winter here, we could have some really powerful weather and storms that are going on, flood events, and things like that. So if you have a personal planet at 29 degrees, especially 29 Gemini, 29 Virgo, 29 Sagittarius, or 29 Pisces, then you're really wrapped up in this Neptune transit. This is a once-in-a-lifetime Neptune transit for you to that personal planet that you have at 29 of one of the mutable signs. And if it's a square or an opposition, it's something that's off. There's something that you have to look at and be honest and real. You have to be careful of over-imagination, and believing in things that may or not be true, and just kind of check yourself and your motivations and what's going on in your life, because there's usually something that's not quite right that's happening if you're under that square from Neptune. And I'm going to be talking about the Mars building up that square too, for all of us in the background. So again, everything about Neptune super powerful, and at the same time here on Wednesday, Mercury opposite Uranus could again continue to show rebellious communication, rebellious thoughts, something culminating this week that's been in process for weeks already. The final bit of news and information that's deep and hidden and buried could be coming out. Surprises, around communications and information, media, really stimulated. Again, thinking outside the box, thinking differently, but whatever that is, it's likely connected to things that have already been on the mind back and forth that's been processed, and this is the final round of it, since we've been going back and forth with this opposition already. It still shows a little bit of a sense of volatility, though, for the day, and unpredictability and possible surprises. There even could be some issues with mechanical stuff, technology, transportation, and traveling would be a little bit more likely to be critical, I would say, on Wednesday and for the next few days. And then the last aspect for Wednesday is this Venus in Sagittarius reaching the square with the nodes of fate. And that will be in the afternoon hours. But it's really all day long. So Venus T-square the nodes of fate. Again, this is a super fateful day. People's decisions about money and love could be at a crossroads, and the decisions that they make could have a long-term effect on the future of whatever's playing out here for you on Wednesday. I think people most affected will be people that have, again, a personal planet around 13 degrees of the mutable signs, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius, and especially Sagittarius, since that's where Venus is at the apex of this. Yeah, Venus is moving pretty quickly. So this will actually be Wednesday night that it's perfect, but it's all day. It's building up all day. Plus, even the moon is going to be coming into that for Thursday, kind of continuing to activate this fateful dynamic from Wednesday and all day Thursday. But again, if you have a personal planet there at 13, then you could be wrapped up in this fate too. And just know that, anything about money or resources that's taking place here, again, it could affect the long-term future and relationship matters. I think it could very well be about money for a lot of people, since Mercury is reaching this last critical degree opposite Uranus in Taurus, which rules money and resources, coming back to this Venus in a T-square. So some sort of surprise or change is very possible that has this effect on the future by midweek. And that's the last aspect for Wednesday. And then we get to Thursday on December 11. There's a lot of aspects here, including the moon reaching the south node, one of the most fateful points of the week in that T-square with Venus. And pretty much the moon is squaring all the Sagittarius planets from this point forward. But there's a point here that also might require, by midweek and into Thursday, a letting go. What needs to be purged and purified, restructured, changed, released. Things of the past, things that are karmic and fateful could be playing out for a lot of people here. So again, whatever's going on in your personal life, Wednesday and Thursday, it's kind of wrapped up into something that's beyond us, something that's from a higher power, or again, a fate and a destiny that's playing out for people. Now, it does kind of enter a challenging moment here. So Moon square Venus is a part of this. So the feelings, the mood, what will nurture people and feel good for people is kind of at odds with what people are desiring at this moment. Again, it comes back to this dynamic between Virgo and Sagittarius, the details, the narrowing of the focus, the practical, materialistic side of life versus the bigger picture, what's above and beyond, indulgences, faith and belief in things, and a lack of the details, because this is a part of the cycle that we're not focused on the details, even though the circumstances and the mood is trying to pick up on those details in this this temporary transit. The bigger focus is not the details. But it's also just a clash of preferences, of mood and desire. Things that people are attracted to or desire may not be what will nurture them or feel good with them. Or there may be a need here to play, to go and enjoy yourself, have adventures, travel, or just do things that are much more pleasurable and enjoyable. And yet there's something more karmic that needs to be taken care of here on Thursday around work or service or health matters. That's taking away a little bit of the pleasure or the joy or the happiness. But at the same time, with Moon square Venus, there could still be a strong need for love and pleasure. It just might be challenging to feel satisfied with whatever's going on here on Thursday early morning. And as the day goes on, we will see that Mercury is at this last critical degree. A sense of change and urgency is about to happen. But Mercury is also aligning with Neptune. That's extra powerful because of the station. So the mind is still in water, even though the mood is more practical and the focus is on the bigger picture, more active and adventurous and outward with fire, passionate, instinctive and all that. But yet we're at this last bit of this water grand trine territory of the emotions, the feelings, the intuition. And with Mercury trine Neptune, it could be very intuitive, and also just tapped into things that are more behind the scenes. Could also just be kind of great for storytelling, imagination. Again, still working with all those Neptunian things that I talked about that are amplified in different ways. And the mind is just perfectly in alignment with that on Thursday. But it's still so fateful, whatever is happening, because the moon is in this T-square with the nodes. So Mercury trine Neptune, again, I think it's super sensitive as well. People's communication are a little more sensitive, a little more inward. Not everything is being spoken. And a lot more dreamy and creative. And for some people, like spiritual and like with divination, it could be very strong for that on Thursday. Now, Mercury will change signs as the day goes on, but before that happens, the moon in Virgo reaches the square with the sun. And this is the last quarter moon phase of this current lunar cycle. The last quarter moon is the crisis in consciousness phase, where there can be an obstacle, a challenge of some kind on Thursday afternoon. The inner and the outer are on two different pages. Again, it's the bigger picture versus the details, and we're challenged in working with both of those. But the last quarter moon is more about accepting, integrating, not pushing too hard or fighting for something or trying to overcome the obstacle. It's usually more about having to accept and surrender to something. And again, integrate lessons or whatever the pressure or the tension is showing. There's a lesson in that to just kind of understand it through your consciousness rather than trying to fight it in some way. If you get wrapped up in a challenge on Thursday, kind of let it be, step back away from it, and just know that midday could have some challenges. Not everything is flowing or smooth in this way. And then Mercury changes signs. One second here. Let me grab something. Okay. So then we get, Mercury changes signs and ingresses Sagittarius again. So now we have this 4 planets in Sagittarius. That's the overwhelming energy wherever you have Sag in your birth chart. But Mercury's been here before, and now it's back. And now Mercury is being ruled by Jupiter in Cancer. Again, I've been saying this every week, but everything is coming back to Jupiter in Cancer. So the feelings, the emotions, the home and the family life is so important. People's needs, people's emotional needs are extra big right now. And since Jupiter is in charge of all this Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is a sign that tends to indulge and goes big with things and goes over the top sometimes. Well, because in this particular phase with Jupiter in Cancer, it's really big needs for people. And so that can lead to people seeking and trying to get what they want in a more powerful way, a more direct way, and kind of maybe overindulgent way. So it all leads to the Sagittarius that's seeking something on different levels for different people. But it has this root about emotions, feelings, needs, safety, security, and comfort, and home and family matters, and the homeland on the global level. But now Mercury, now the thoughts are back in this position too, that have that root about needs and how we're thinking again, come back to what we need and how to get that. But also Mercury in Sagittarius, okay? This is also a place that Mercury is not its favorite place to be. It's not at its strongest, although it doesn't mean it's bad if you personally have it, because there's a lot of great things about Mercury and Sag. It's just more about, again, looking at the bigger picture, whereas Mercury is more about, Virgo and Gemini, the details and narrowing the focus and getting down to the information. And Mercury here is just looking at everything in this bigger perspective. So there's kind of this perspective change. This communication style is going to start to change. Again, people are more bold, more opinionated. Their beliefs are really powerful and amplified. Faith and belief in things and truth is a strong need for people to express themselves. And that is, a big change there on Thursday. And then the moon is also in conjunct to Chiron. So we're still kind of adjusting to that back and forth, plus that square in the background. Now, luckily, the sun and these Sagittarius transits are in harmony with Chiron, but we have a mixed bag with Chiron. So again, it's the sensitive side of life where people have insecurities and wounds, and it can be physical, it can be internal, but again, there's things that are tripping people up about the ego, about the self, about their confidence, their freedom and independence. It keeps getting triggered in different ways. Now, moon is sextile Jupiter, so the moon does enter a little bit of a sweet spot here as the day goes on. Actually, the evening hours is when Moon Jupiter connect, so that kind of adds a little bit of a more of a pleasant vibe for the mood for a couple hours here on Thursday night. Connects again to the home, retreat, safety, security, and comfort, feeling more supported or motivated or nurturing the self in an easier way, or just feeling better, generally speaking, on Thursday night. But at the same time, that won't last very long, because then the moon starts to oppose Saturn as it reaches the end of Virgo. So now there's this opposition late on Thursday night, right before we enter Friday, between the moon the feelings, circumstances, and this weight, this pressure, this burden, this seriousness that the circumstances will start to pick up on late on Thursday. So we go through that every month, but again, it's a little bit critical. It's a little more cynical. It's a little more stress or pressure or fear could be coming in for some people. And that's the last aspect for Thursday. And then the moon is going to oppose. Well, no, first the moon, we'll get to the next day here on Friday, December 12th. And the moon is at the last few degrees of Virgo, first thing in the morning. And we start off with the moon squaring Mars, and then the moon opposing Neptune and trine Uranus. So the moon is really connecting to all the outer planets here in different ways. But the moon square Mars, this again is super early in the morning. So I think that it's it's relevant for everybody first thing in the morning, let's say. Kind of sets the tone too of a little bit of an edgy mood or a friction mood. Moon square Mars can be agitated, critical from Virgo. It could show this impulsiveness, this instinct to take action, this drive to do something for Friday. It's not going to last. Of course, the moon is making a ton of aspects, so there'll be all these different influences. But this is the one that starts the day. A little bit edgy, critical. But then the moon trine Uranus shows there's an opening, or people feel comfortable with something different, unusual, outside of the box, trying new things in a practical way. And then the opposition to Neptune really shows a sensitivity becomes more powerful right before there's going to be this mood change for the next 2.5 days. So this is kind of a retreat vibe, sensitive vibe. This is on Friday, first thing in the morning as well. So could be feeling more lazy, kind of, again, sensitive. And then the moon changes signs into Libra for the next 2.5 days. And now the moon in Libra is being ruled by Venus. And this is still first thing in the morning. So really early in the morning is kind of one way. And then as we get the day going, the late morning and afternoon is a separate vibe, which to me looks like it's going to be better because now the moon in Libra, it shows people are wanting to create more beauty, more harmony, more peace and comfort and make things beautiful for all involved. And it's about relationships now for the next 2.5 days. Generally speaking, there's more of a mood to harmonize relationships and deal with other people, one-on-one connections with people, partners, relationships of all kinds. It comes to Venus and Sagittarius as well. And then if it's not about relationship, it's still just this general mood that's more intellectual, objective, communicative. And it's good that we have some air. This moon can help balance things out a little more, give us a little more of an intellectual perspective about things. But it could also just be about, okay, now we're kind of weighing things out. We're trying to be more objective, seeing both sides of a situation, no matter what it is, so we can kind of be more fair as we come into Friday. And then there's only 2 easy aspects for the rest of the day. The moon is sextile Mercury. So now the mood and the thoughts are more in alignment with each other. So this is a better time to communicate, to express, to run errands, to do mercurial activities Friday late morning, Friday afternoon. And the heart and the mind are more cooperative with each other, basically. And then the moon is trine Pluto. So now this social side gets more activated. Circumstances in the mood align better with the power dynamic within the friendships and the community of life. And that is the last aspect for Friday. Let's move this forward. That kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day. Moon in Libra. Until we get to Saturday on December 13. And we have 2 minor aspects and 2 major ones. We start off with Mars in conjunct to Uranus. So Mars is starting to reach the last critical degrees. It's within orb at this point to the square with Neptune, but also the in conjunction to Uranus. It's almost like a little bit of a rebellious vibe is affecting people, and we're having to adjust to that. Something different, an impulsiveness to do something different or outside of the box from normal, a little more rebellious vibe. And then at the same time, even though this Mars square won't be exact until Sunday, it's still relevant here. And I look at that as this building up of some distortion to the motivation or the action. It can also show there's secret action going on. There's scandalous things, but there's also hidden motives and hidden action taking place in different places in the world. And this can definitely be on a mundane level with the world governments or military in some context here. This can also sometimes show like large explosions are possible this week or into the weekend or something. Like sometimes it's oil or propane or other gas kind of explosions or something is kind of possible with this. I've seen it before. But again, you're going to have to check yourself, check your motivation, especially when you get to the end of this week into the weekend. I'll talk more about that for the following day, but again, it's still kind of building up. And then Mercury is sextile Pluto again. We've gone through that multiple times. So again, there can be an easy transformation to the mind and the thoughts and the perceptions of things, more powerful communication, more persuasive words and communication that's taking place here. And then just, again, a mental transformation, also connecting more to the group, the friends, the community, science and technology. In fact, there may have been something in development this last several weeks with this Mercury back and forth, and now, it could be preparing to come out, something that's been in development in different ways, so with technology or something. But I think it just amplifies and intensifies words and communications in the mind and the way we're thinking about things here. And we have the moon in conjunct to the north node of destiny, as that Libra moon is going through this aspect on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. So we may have to adjust our future, our plans based on others, relationships, any kind of new information that comes out this weekend. Again, adjusting to things that are behind the scenes versus relationships and people and this more diplomacy vibe that is taking place. And then the last aspect will be the moon sextile Venus. So this is where things are easier in regard to pleasure and relationship connection and feeling more satisfied and content with others and other forms of pleasurable activities could be going well here on Saturday evening. Could be a good time for social activity on Saturday evening. This will be Saturday night, depending on where you live. But it's Saturday evening for the West Coast. Yeah, Saturday evening and Saturday night looks pretty decent, generally speaking. With that connection going on, I think it can be enjoyable and pleasurable. All right, so that's Saturday, December 13. Let's move this forward and we get to Sunday on December 14. And the moon is still in Libra, being ruled by that Venus. First thing in the morning, we still have that connection between moon and Venus that carries over this more pleasurable dynamic in the air, the mood. Still about relationships and others and trying to create more beauty and diplomacy and compromise. And then we have a ton of aspects here on Sunday. And this is where we get that Mars at this last critical degree of Sagittarius. So there's a sense of urgency for action. There's, again, this drive, this motivation to take action for something. But because of that square, you got to be extra careful. So again, if you have a personal planet at 29 degrees of one of the mutable signs of Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius, then you're really wrapped up into this because you're already under the once-in-a-lifetime Neptune and Saturn for that matter. And now you get the Mars too. So you have to be extra careful if you do have a planet at 29 degrees of mutable. But for everybody in the background, we should still be cautious of what we're motivated to do. Again, sometimes this can be people taking secret action. They don't want other people to know what they're up to or what they're doing, so there's more suspicion in the air or something too. But there's also, scandalous activity playing out in different places around the world in some major way. Now, are we going to necessarily see it? Is it going to come out to be noticeable here on Sunday? It may not on the world level, but down the road, we could hear about what was going on during this time or something. And again, again, I've seen explosions from this, gas or propane or oil stuff going on there. It's possible. There could be some Navy event possibly here. Mars is the military. Pisces and this Neptune here shows water and ocean stuff. So there might be some Navy kind of conflict that comes in. Again, it might be more covert and secret too. We may not hear about it necessarily. But overall, I would just say be mindful of what's driving you, what's inspiring you, because this can also be martyr energy, self-sacrificing, taking action based on a belief, even a false belief. It could be also religious, again, like martyrs and stuff, that are taking negative action. You have to be extra cautious, again, of what you think is a cause or a truth or something, that you're doing here, even though it could be causing conflict. So check yourself, check your motivations, your impulsiveness and instincts on what's pushing you into something, and just ask yourself, is that my best choice, by doing this? Be extra careful if you are going to take a risk of some type. The odds technically aren't in your favor around taking a risk in this kind of a dynamic. So I would lay off of doing anything overly dangerous or risky during this time period. This can show issues with water and gas stuff too. But even like drownings, accidents that come with water, or again, fumes, or, something like that. But it's critical. It's definitely critical, and it's definitely going to play out on the world stage in different ways. So it could also be weather. This Mars could really amplify, trigger this Neptune of water events somewhere, flooding event or storm or something. That's one way. There's just so many different possibilities, but most of them are all negative in this. So, knowing that can go a long way in kind of counterbalancing any kind of negative activity that other people that don't know astrology, might just instinctively do or something. And then just be mindful that the rest of the world is wrapped up in this, and they may be unconscious, of what's taking place, what's motivating other people to take action. But it looks critical by this week and into next week. And then we have the sun making a trine to Chiron. So there's a positive light being shined on the wounded healer and healing, or, is there a healing component involved in some way? It's possible, but there's something bigger that's been triggered for months already. But the sun is still shining a positive light on healing in some cases. And the moon is also opposite Chiron at the same time. So that's very interesting that both the moon and sun are aspecting Chiron perfectly, as the moon is also sextile the sun. So this is part of the lunar cycle where the lights are more in harmony with each other, more cooperation going on. And yet there's that one difficult aspect in the background that's a red flag for sure. But there's also something about healing here. Now, I think it's about healing for the majority of people. The thing about this, though, is that Chiron is ruled by Mars, and Mars is in this square. So I want to say it has a healing effect of whatever this is, but on the other hand, it could cause wounds and injuries too, just because everything is aspecting it. I mean, there's a lot here that's aspecting Chiron. The sun trine Chiron, moon opposite Chiron, Jupiter square Chiron, and kind of a mixed bag of aspects. It doesn't really look all that easy. So just be extra cautious and pay attention to what you're doing. And then again, the moon is also square Jupiter as all this is taking place on Sunday morning. All this was first thing in the morning too, so there's a T-square. So moon square Jupiter tends to show things are out of balance. Things are over the top. Big feelings, big mood. People's emotions are making a big deal about something, either in a positive way or a negative way, but it's big feelings, and things are a little bit again, out of balance. Could be something about home and family relationships too, that this is connected to on Sunday. So be extra cautious with your family members and what you're saying and communicating or doing with others on Sunday. Try to also, this could show people also have a big mood, a big appetite for something, and they're seeking something to be fulfilled by that's could be harmful or over the top in some way, or just big circumstances are playing out in one way or the other. But because of that Mars square Neptune, it still looks shady to me, and you got to be mindful of that. And then for most of the rest of the day, there's a lot of inconjunctions, which are aspects of irritation and adjustment, including moon inconjunct to Saturn, picking up on the pressure and the weight of what's behind the scenes and adjusting to that. And then the moon inconjunct to Uranus, the freedom, the need to liberate, the need for new and different exciting things, or just, again, some volatility, adjusting to that volatility, trying to maintain balance and harmony despite a lot of adjustments and irritations and changes that are taking place on Sunday. There's really not a lot of easy aspects for most of the day. So I think overall it could be a challenging day generally. The sun is also in conjunct to Jupiter. And again, adjusting to a lot about feelings, moods, home and family stuff, and big energy. And then the moon is in conjunct to Neptune, adjusting to, again, the blind spots, the sensitivity, pulled into other realities or your own world, or things like that that are more hidden and private, that are affecting the mood and relationships and the harmony and peace of the day. And then we get an easy aspect of moon sextile Mars. So now there's beginning to be this better connection for action, but Mars is still tightly in that square. But we're comfortable with the action and the activity and the drive. We just have to make sure we're aware of what is motivating us. And then the moon will change signs. It's reaching this last degree of Libra. There's also that finger of God from, it's not perfect, but from Neptune, Uranus pointing towards the circumstances by Sunday evening, Sunday night, especially for people that have 28 to 29 Libra in their chart. Little act of fate from a higher power or some significant event could get triggered in some way that you have to adjust to. But then the moon changes signs and ingresses Scorpio, and this is where the moon is considered debilitated. It doesn't like to be here. It's deeper, it's more intense and uncomfortable, and more fear and worry, deeper stuff is coming up. Also the need to be in control now, trying to control feelings. But yet there's always going to be a need here for the moon in Scorpio for deeper intimacy, deeper connection. But now the moon and the circumstances for the next 2.5 days is being ruled by this Mars at this critical degree, about to change signs. So the moon in Scorpio is also about other people's money, other people's resources. This is Sunday night that this moon changes signs, so it carries over into next week. But it's just a deeper emotional placement that really doesn't mix well with this Sagittarius that's more outward and above and beyond, versus the moon, which is more private, deeper, intense. It's wanting to be more in control of situations. And not only that, but the moon will have to square Pluto. So then we get to the following day on Monday, December 15, and the first aspect is Mars changing signs. Mars ingresses Capricorn now. It's a change of gears, a change of energy for the world by next Monday. Now, this is a very good place for Mars. Again, Mars is exalted. It's a place that shows the energy is very strong for people. This is the placement that I say, Mars in Capricorn, it can get the job done. It has a certain amount of strength and endurance and resourcefulness and practicality and taking things more slower and doing things right. So now the action and the motivation is under the rulership of Saturn from behind the scenes of what drives people. So people are going to start to be less rebellious, more traditional, and kind of start to separate from this square to Neptune. It's still somewhat strong even as Mars changes signs by next week, but gradually by next week, that influence will slowly start to separate, and more of a practical kind of drive comes in, a motivation to get things done and work on goals and ambitions, things that we want to accomplish. People will have a bigger drive and energy to do those things. And a lot of it could also be fear-based too for some people, since it comes back to Saturn behind the scenes. That is amplifying worry and fear and hard knocks for some people. And now they're going to be more motivated to get what they need to get, or get the job done, or get out of a situation, but it's more like longer term. It's more like big picture, longer term action. It's like the mountain goat as well. But Mars in Capricorn is a good position overall. But right after that, as that change is taking place on Monday morning, the moon is squaring Pluto. So there's still a strong power dynamic in the air, power and control issues. The moon is clashing with the friends, the group, and the community, and the power dynamics that are within the community. So there's a lot of undercurrents here. And there's still a lot of tension, no matter what. But that's all first thing in the morning. And as the day goes on, the moon will then align with the nodes of fate in an easier way. So Monday's also a fateful day. We're aligned with our future, or whatever's happening could show us our future or put us on the path that we need to be on. But the moon is at the tail end of this cycle until we get to that Sagittarius new moon. But at the same time, things are starting to get more challenging, I think, especially by next week, because not only did Mars have to square Saturn and Neptune, but then the sun is going to start squaring Saturn next week, and Venus and the new moon will square Saturn and Neptune. So we're going to come into kind of a challenging Sagittarius cycle. But then right after the new moon, all the Sagittarius will come into Capricorn, which will be easier actually, because there's no aspects that are challenging this Capricorn right now. But the cycle will be rooted. It will be a tough week. I think next week, when I come back for next week's report, if I show up, you never know. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing for this week. And we'll be closing out this cycle and starting a brand new one next week. So that's what I have for you. I hope that's given you some insights. Appreciate you watching. Hit that like button for me. I always appreciate that. And I'll catch you on the next one. Hope you have a great week.